Hi friends, welcome to Kraku's video series. I'm Sayali Kale. I'm one of the co-founders of Kraku and an alumna of IIM Ahmedabad. In today's video, we'll look at what strategy you should adopt to crack CAT in 6 months. So firstly, one thing that we get, the one type of question that we get a lot is, this is my profile, this is my 10th, 12th undergrad, and there are 6 months left to CAT. Should I actually attempt CAT? Is there a chance? Is it possible for me to crack CAT given this much time is there? So for that, I'll basically say that your 10th, 12th and undergrad marks are a part of your past. There is nothing you can do about them anymore. The max you can think about is what you can do for your future. So given the next 6 months, what you should actually focus on is how you can use the next 6 months to maximize your chance of getting into a good MBA institute. That should be your target. Instead of obsessing about whether or not this much time is enough or whether or not, how much percentile you'll need, instead of thinking of all of that, if you have thought of joining, doing an MBA, if that is the next step in your career path, then you should just basically think of how you should do the best you can in CAT. That should be your primary goal given the next 6 months if you want to do an MBA. So this time period where around May and June is when most people start preparing. The reason for that is that the bulk of students who actually prepare for CAT are those who are either in their last year, have just graduated, or have been working for 1 or 2 years. This forms like the bulk of people who are actually giving CAT. Those with more amount of experience also are there, but they are actually a minority. The bulk of students who give CAT are the ones who are yet to graduate or are fresh graduates. So given this, you just have to think of when they actually will have time to start preparing. They'll have time to start preparing once their end semester exams are over, which is around May and June. So most of your peers will be starting to seriously study from this point on. So if you have to think of it competitively, what should you do? Firstly, you should start studying from today. You do not want to be left behind when a large number of people are starting preparing. Some will give up, some will be regular, some will be hardworking, and some will be irregular with their work. If you are regular with your work, if you make sure that you put in 2 to 3 hours every day, then it would not, then that would make a real impact in the last 6 months. Starting now but then giving up after some time would not make a real dent. So if you have to think of it, you have to think of it that what can I do today? I'm starting my CAT preparation. What can I do today to maximize the chances that I'll crack CAT in the next 6 months? So the way to go about this is to have a strategy in place. You should have goals for each week, for each month. You should know exactly where you stand. Only if you take a schedule kind of like a organized kind of approach to cracking this problem would it actually work, because this requires a lot of things to be covered, a lot of things to be done, and it's easy to get overwhelmed by the amount of work that has to be done. So make sure that you start today. You make a plan. You set aside 2 to 3 hours every single day. Even if you're a working individual, for a working professional, putting 2 to 3 hours every day is difficult. But if you can earmark that time every single day where you leave aside everything else and sit and study, then it will make a huge difference come CAT day. The reason for this is that if you put in consistent effort, that has a lot more impact than one-off efforts, or if you sit for 18 hours at a time, that will actually have less impact on your skills than if you sit for 2 hours for 9 days. The reason for that is that because after some point of time, the mind doesn't absorb as much, it doesn't learn as much. So a consistent approach is the best approach you can take. And given the fact that you are starting 6 months before CAT, you have the time to actually pace yourself, to organize yourself, and to take a more structured approach to cracking CAT. So make sure that you start from today, you make a plan. So basically you should have a schedule in mind. Okay, this week I'm going to do this. This week I'm going to tackle these topics. I'm going to set aside 2 to 3 hours every day, either in the evening or in the morning, to do this work. Only if you actually have a structured approach would you do well. Now think about the major exams in your life. The few exams most of you would have gone through are for 10th, 12th, and the several exams that you took during your undergrad examination. Now think of the amount of effort and time that you put in for your 10th and 12th, how organized you were during that period, and consider that amount of time and effort you put in undergrad as also how organized you were in undergrad. Even if you are a good student, generally people don't put in that much time and effort in undergrad, especially they don't put in that much time and effort in organizing their efforts, and that impacts how well you score at the end of the day. For most people, how much they scored in 10th and 12th would be considerably more than their undergrads, because they'd be more prepared in their 10th and 12th. People tell you seriously all year round that it is your 10th standard, it is your 12th standard, and you have to prepare for it. They don't do that for your undergrad, so it impacts how well you score in your undergrad. Now you have to mentally prepare yourself that this CAT is a very important part of my important part of my career. I have to do well in CAT 2019. This is like my 10th or 12th year, I don't get another chance. If you actually mentally prepare yourself that this is a very important year for you to actually set aside that time, you would be more organized, you'd be able to set aside the time that you have to. Because when you're giving your 12th standard exam, you don't get a chance to redo it. You know that that is the only one chance you get, and because you know that that's the only one chance you get, you actually take it seriously. Many students don't take CAT seriously, they don't prepare till the last moment. If you take it seriously, if you consider this to be the best attempt that you can possibly give and plan accordingly, then it would be your best chance at cracking CAT. So make sure that you start from today, you make a plan. Now many students don't know how to actually make a plan. There's a lot of things to study. Where do I actually start? So basically think of what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. So this you should know at a section level. So you should know that, okay, I'm good at DILR, I'm not so good at VARC, or I'm good at quant, I'm not so good at DILR. So you should know at a section level what sections are your strength. Also within the section you should know which topics are your favorite or are something that you are familiar with, you are comfortable with, and what topics you are not comfortable with. So you should identify your strengths and weaknesses. How do you go about identifying it? The best way that you can identify your strengths and weaknesses is by taking a mock. There is no other way that would actually simulate the real experience of dealing with these questions than a mock. So please start your preparation by taking a mock. That will help you analyze by putting into perspective where you stand in the entire process, where you stand as compared to your peers who are going to take CAT 2019, and what your strengths and weaknesses are. Nothing else will give you that kind of perspective. Topic tests will not help you assess where you stand that well, because you might do well in a particular topic given more time or given more flexibility to choose questions from that topic. But the only real test of how well you will do in a particular section or in a particular topic is how well you do in a mock, in a full length mock. So please start your preparation by taking a full length mock. Now you have taken a full length mock, what should you do? You should analyze to figure out what are your strengths and weaknesses, where did you do well, where did you do poorly. Now that you have understood, okay, I am good at these particular topics, I am not so good at these particular topics, what do? You basically now need a plan which addresses the weaknesses. So you need more practice, more concept building in the areas where you are weaker in. In areas that are your strengths, you need a heavier hand on practice and lesser focus on concept building. So essentially, you should think of it in this way, that in your 6 months preparation, you have this much, say 3 hours of time every single day from say May to November. You wouldn't exactly put like consistently put some amount of time for concept building and the rest of the time for practice and mocks, because that would be kind of foolish. Initially, you should put more effort in building concepts. You should put more effort in building, understanding or learning new things. Over time, this focus on concepts should go down, and instead, if this is your concepts part, this part should go down, and instead you should turn your focus towards practice. So initially you should build on building your foundation, building your concepts, and later on you should work more on practicing. So this is the general approach that you have to take. So initially, after you have taken a full length mock, what you should do is identify all the concepts that you're not good in. You should start revising those concepts. You should start looking at videos for them. Start taking tests which are basically focused on that areas. Start taking tests from a study room which are smaller topic tests from that area, so that you get a better hold of that topic. The more you practice from a particular topic, the better you get at solving questions from that topic. So the initial time is to do targeted practice. Basically find a weakness and try to fix it. This would be a good area, good start to your preparation as such. Try to identify the weaknesses and proactively try to fix them. But you still have a lot of area to cover in terms of concepts. It might not be that you are not, you don't know a concept, but you might not be familiar with it with a particular concept because there is so much to remember. In this case, generally have a schedule in place which tells which subjects you are going to read every single week. So you should say that, okay, this week I am going to do geometry, this week I am going to focus on triangles, this week I am going to focus on circles, after that I am going to go to arithmetic, and this is how I am going to proceed. Now generally what I would say is that make this plan beforehand, before you start preparing, so that you know exactly what you have to do every single week. So that if you are falling behind, you have a visual, you have an idea that you are falling behind. Make the schedule, print it out, put it in front of you. If you sit at a desk and study, print out the schedule and put it in front of you, because if you have a visual input every single day saying that this was your schedule, if you are falling behind on that, it acts as a check on your behavior. You won't fall behind a lot if you know every single day that you are supposed to do these things. So make sure that if you make a schedule, you actually print it out and put it up. If you guys are not sure where to start or how to make the schedule, we have a lot of batches where we teach all of these concepts from the start, from the very basic to the advanced concepts, and we put up the schedules for each of these batches. So starting May, for example, we have a batch starting May 13. So we have put up a schedule for it. Even if you are not part of the batch, you can watch you can see the schedule. You can see which concepts will be covered on which days. You can try to follow the schedule using your own resources. So make sure that you have at least some order to your preparation. You have some schedule in front of you, and please print this schedule out and put it in front of you, because if there is a visual cue every single day that you need to be studying, then you will be better at actually keeping track of your studies. So make sure that you make a schedule. So this is the first things that you should get clear about cracking CAT. That you should have a organized plan to crack CAT in 6 months. You should know where you stand. You should start with taking one mock, and you should know your strengths and weaknesses. As I said, you first focus on building concepts, and slowly the focus should shift towards practice. Initially, I would suggest that take a mock, one mock every fortnight. Every time that you take a mock, you should go back and analyze it. You should very carefully analyze it. You should take a look at every question that you got wrong. You should understand why you got that question wrong. Was it a silly mistake? Did you not know the concept? Was the time not adequate or sufficient to solve the question? Why did you actually make that mistake? If you understand that, then you can identify, okay, if only I knew this formula, I would have been able to answer this question. If you can identify that, then you can learn that formula, and then you can plug a hole in your preparation as such. The more deficiencies you overcome, the more weaknesses you overcome, the better prepared you will be for actual CAT day. So make sure that you keep taking mocks regularly over your preparation. Many students believe that they will start taking mocks in September, but I think that is too late. It will not give you a good idea about whether or not you are doing well in your preparation. If you leave mocks till September, then if there is something majorly wrong, if there is a major weakness that you are not addressing, then September does not give you a lot of room to actually solve that problem. If it's RCs that you are not good at September, then you would be overwhelmed with how many things you have to actually do. So that would leave you with very little time to actually take a more fundamental, more organized view of solving your problems. So start taking a mock right now, because that will at least ensure that none of your problems are hidden from you, that you know exactly what you need to do till CAT day. If you take a mock every fortnight, that is the best way for you to ensure that you are on track with your preparation. Otherwise, it is very easy to start out with a lot of enthusiasm and then lose steam within a couple of weeks. A lot of students do that. So if you have to keep yourself motivated throughout, you need to keep taking mocks regularly. Now let's take a look at specific topics, because it's important to actually have a organized strategy in place, because it's naive to think that I'll cover all topics, I'll cover all the questions from all topics, and I'll revise and remember all the subjects, all the formulas that are there. That is not how the mind works, especially because this is a aptitude based test. It is very important that you build these skills over time. This is not a test similar to 10th standard or 12th standard, in the sense that sitting one day before the test or remembering or memorizing formulas is not going to help you much. Remembering a formula is just 1/10 of the problem. Remembering the right formula for the right question is actually the biggest pain as far as CAT is concerned. Then being able to solve the question is another problem. So this is not something that you can improve at overnight. It's not a problem that you can solve with a night out. You have to improve your aptitude skills, your quant skills, your verbal ability skills over time, and this will be like small efforts, small steps forward. So you have to make sure that you put in every single day of the next 6 months to do that. You will not be able to do this overnight. So make sure that you have a strategy in place and you look for consistent efforts. Only consistent efforts will pay in this. You have to think of it in this way, that I have to improve my quant skills considerably, I have to improve my verbal and comprehension skills considerably, and I have to improve my logical reasoning skills considerably. None of this is about knowledge, it is about thinking skills. Now thinking skills do not improve overnight. They have to be honed, they have to be improved by practice, and practice takes time. So every single day if you put in the practice, you will be improving your skills by like 1%, but that 1% will add up over time. 1% every day for a year makes your overall skills 37 times larger. 1% lesser every day for a year will make you 3% of what you started off with. So just think of it in that way. I have to be 1% better every single day in quant, in RC, in VA, in DILR. Now that you know that you have to work at quant, how do you actually start? Where do you start? I would always say that the bulk of your paper, the 70% part of your paper is geometry and arithmetic. If you get geometry and arithmetic right, you get 70% of the paper right. If you get these two subjects wrong, you are going to mess up your paper. So make sure that the first level of attempt, whichever mock it is that you take, your first mock, your nth mock, that you will answer every single geometry question that comes your way, every single arithmetic question that comes your way. Especially arithmetic is that kind of a topic that you should never leave. Everything from time, speed, distance, time and work, profit and loss, averages, ratio and proportion, everything from these topics you should always attempt. Arithmetic is basically the foundation of your CAT quant attempt. You miss a question from this, you are basically giving your opponent or your peer a 3-mark advantage over you. You should never miss any question from arithmetic. I know a lot of students struggle with geometry, and it's difficult for some students to accept that you should answer every single question in geometry. But if you think of it in this way, if you start doing that now, when you have 6 months to CAT, you have a much better chance of actually being good at geometry. If you put in 6 months concerted effort for geometry, you will be good at it. It is one of those topics that responds a lot to practice. If you put in the hard work, you will do well in geometry. Even if you are very smart and you have not put in hard work, you will not do well in geometry. It's basically one of those things where the students who are smarter have an advantage in arithmetic. The students who are smarter have an advantage in algebra. But the guys who have worked hard are the ones who have an advantage in geometry. So if you're going to work hard, if you're willing to work hard, make geometry the topic that will boost your overall score. So please focus from the first mock onwards, focus on arithmetic and geometry. You should not miss a question from this. In geometry, you will end up making mistakes. Still, you will learn from those mistakes. Make sure that you don't leave anything from arithmetic and geometry. After that, you have to cherry pick which topics should be your favorite ones. One topic that I really like because of its determinate nature, where the chances of error are low, where the chances of going wrong or not finding the answer are low, that topic is logarithms. If you know some 15 odd formulae, if you remember those formulae, you can solve every question from logarithms. Now if you know this, you just have to actually work at remembering those formulae and work at solving some questions from logarithms. If that you can put in that effort, then you are guaranteed 2 to 3 questions in CAT Quant. That's a pretty good for effort put in. That's a pretty good reward to work ratio. It is an extremely rewarding topic. I always say that you should do well in logarithms. Just remember the formula, just practice the formula, you will do well in logarithms. Then the next type of questions that I really feel that nobody should miss are the simpler number system questions. So simpler number system questions asks you how many numbers are of the type where some divisibility rule is applied or some basic number representation format is applied or base systems is applied. All of these questions are on the easier side. But many students leave them because they are afraid of number systems. Number systems is like a huge topic. It has a lot of complicated formulas, a lot of complicated theorems in the remainder side of it. There are a lot of things that should truly scare you in number systems. But there are simpler parts of number systems as well. And in fact, what we have observed is a lot of questions in CAT are coming from the simpler divisibility rules kind of parts of number systems. So if a simpler number system question comes, you should definitely attempt it. One of the often forgotten parts of quant is Venn diagrams. So Venn diagrams questions are basically, you can consider that there will be basically just 2 types of questions that come from Venn diagrams. Either you have to find a missing value or you have to find the max overlap or min overlap. That is just 2 concepts that you have to actually read. We have these 2 videos in our video series. Just see those videos, and if you know these 2 concepts, you can solve any question from Venn diagrams, and you are assured of at least 1 question from Venn diagrams. So that's 3 marks that you can immediately take. So there are 2 questions over here, there's 1 question over here, there are 2 questions from this. So that is 15 marks that are there for the taking, which should be there in your first level, attempt of the paper. So as you go through the paper, every single geometry or arithmetic question you come across, you solve. Every single logarithms question you come across, you solve. A simpler number system questions you come across, you should solve. A Venn diagram question you come across, you should solve. That should be in your first sweep through your section. Any linear and quadratic equation, those are the kind of questions where most of the time students are wary of polynomial equations, and as you should be, because factorizing polynomial equations sometimes takes a lot of time, and that can be a sinkhole of time as such. So most of the students, whenever they see algebra, they kind of take a step back and think, okay, I might waste too much time on this particular topic, should I attempt it or not? Now if that algebra question is on linear equations or on quadratic equations, you should definitely attempt that this, because there are very few topics or concepts to remember in this particular topic, and it is very easy to master this topic with practice. So this is one of those areas where you can expect 1 to 2 questions, and you should definitely solve those particular questions. So this is the questions that you should go through in your first this is your first sweep and you are taking mocks regularly. Your first order of business in preparing for CAT should be that you should be very good at this. Focus on geometry. It takes time to learn geometry, but it will be rewarding. Focus on arithmetic, because without arithmetic your CAT Quant will be horrible. So focus on these 2 topics and then go through the topics that you are most comfortable with. Cherry pick certain topics that have a good reward ratio, where for some effort you will get a lot of marks. Those topics you should first target in your preparation. So this is what I would actually suggest if you are starting now for quant, what you should actually focus on. Then comes the second level of attempt, where you go for topics that are harder at times, that are trickier, that take more time to solve. Now these are the type of questions that you should not actually invest time in the first run through. In the first run through, you should take only those questions that you are certain to solve under 3 minutes. So progressions and series can take some time to solve. Probability, permutations and combinations, the problem with this topic is that the number of questions from this topic have decreased quite a bit, and there are a lot of concepts to learn from this topic. So it means that you would be putting in a lot of time and effort for a topic that might never be asked. But if it is asked, it is easy to solve, and you will be getting at least 3 marks out of it. So make sure that in your second level of attempt, if there is a probability question, you go for it, because if you are comfortable with the inherent understanding of probability, this should be a pretty easy type of question to solve. The third level of attempt is where you start with the difficult algebra questions. Don't go for the algebra questions in the first get-go, because what might happen is that you might end up taking too much time to solve it, and then that will shake your confidence in the remaining section as such. So this is when you should go for the algebra questions in your third sweep through the section. Now if you're going to leave it for the later parts of your attempt, you should also leave it for the later parts of your preparation. The reason for that is that many students, I've always felt that they spend too much time in difficult number theory questions, learning difficult remainder theorems, learning how to solve difficult algebraic problems, etc. But that would not actually help you that much in CAT It will help you in improving your ability to attempt those questions, but the accuracy will still not be great, and these questions take a lot of time. So these questions are important if you want to go to if you want to score 97 percentile plus in quant. This is absolutely essential for you to score like 99 percentile in quant. But for everything below that, if you just do the other first level and second level of attempt properly, then you should get to 97 percentile in quant pretty easily. It's just above that you have to take a look at difficult questions from functions, difficult algebra questions, difficult questions from number systems. So don't spend a majority part of your preparation focused on these parts and ignore basic things like arithmetic and geometry, because it might feel that you might feel that spending so much time on solving questions that are just CAT level or just above CAT level is not as useful as solving a lot of difficult questions. But the fact is that most of your questions will be from arithmetic and geometry, and it makes more sense that you invest more time in that particular section. So always make sure that you are not actually drawn to areas where the reward for putting in a lot of effort is very low. Focus first on areas where you'll get a lot of marks for a little bit of effort. And arithmetic, geometry, logarithms, all of these are areas where you'll get a lot of marks for a little bit of effort. So do well in those first. Make sure that when you make your schedule, you put more emphasis on these topics earlier in the schedule. Now let's go to the verbal strategy. So over the previous few CATs, the only thing that has really come is RCs, parajumbles and parasummary. One more thing that has actually happened in parajumbles is that they have stopped giving contiguous sentences. Even in parasummary, what they are doing is that they are giving crisp parasummaries. They are not asking for you to summarize each important point or anything like that. They are instead going for the gist of the paragraph. So what exactly are they trying to evaluate through each of these three things? They are basically only focused on your comprehension skills. A lot of students believe that if they are weak in English, they will do poorly in VARC section, but that is not true. I personally know of a student who was from Hindi medium and he always felt that he had very low chance in VARC section. But what I always told him was that this section is a test of your comprehension skills, and if you are a smart guy, you will do well in this section also. If you are able to read a paragraph and understand what is the author trying to say through the paragraph, what is the main point of the paragraph, if you are able to comprehend, irrespective of your language skills, you will do well in this particular section. English definitely helps your comprehension skills. You will understand nuances of the language better, you will understand nuances of the paragraph and the passage better, but it will do only so much. At the end of the day, it is a test of your comprehension skills. So if you have to do well in verbal, the best strategy is to work on your comprehension skills. And how do you improve your comprehension skills? Read from a wide variety of sources. And not just read passively, read actively. So what is active reading? Whenever you read, every single paragraph, for every paragraph you read, write down the main point of the paragraph. Whether it is an editorial, whether it is an essay, whether it is essentially if it's a philosophical work, no matter what it is, make sure that whenever you read, you write down the main point of the paragraph. This is solely a test of your comprehension skills. If you are able to read a paragraph and comprehend it completely, you will do well in all three. If you are not able to do that well, then you will do poorly in all three. Even if you are a Hindi medium student, just focus on understanding the main point of the paragraph. If you are able to do that, even if you don't get a few words here and there. So the key to cracking this section is to basically build your comprehension skills. Now if you have to build your comprehension skills, what do you do? Basically you have to have you have to develop a reading habit. A lot of students have not read anything like past their 10th or 12th standard where they had required reading. Apart from that, they have not read anything actively. So it's very important that you actually start actively reading. Pick up start with things that are easy to read, like Indian editorials, and start by writing down the main point of each paragraph you read. Sit down with a pen and paper and write down proper main points of each paragraph you read. This would be the first step. The second step is you should then go to things that are harder to read or harder to comprehend, such as long form essays, where the author takes more time to build his point. When the author tries to build his point over 4 or 5 paragraphs, it's difficult to get the point immediately. If the author is building the point over a paragraph, he has to be more forthcoming or more direct with his point. If the author has to make the point over 4 or 5 paragraphs, then he will take his time building the case. So it is difficult to tell what exactly is the author trying to do. So that will actually help you deal with actual RC passages where most students are confused as to what is the author trying to say through the passage as such. So start reading longer form essays such as the New Yorker. In India, the Caravan magazine is a good source of long form essays, or the Guardian as such. So read longer form essays, and for each of these essays, write down the main point of each paragraph. So you'll get main point 1, main point 2, main point 3, and so on till main point n. And then understand overall what is the author trying to say, what is the overall main point, what is the purpose behind writing this passage. He is definitely writing this passage to influence the reader's thinking in a particular way. Then you have to identify what is the author how is he trying to make you think. You have to understand that, how is the author trying to influence your thinking. If you are able to identify that, then you have gone from one level of reading to another level of reading, where you are able to understand not just what the author is trying to say, but the motivations behind the writing. Then the last part that you have to do is harder to read sources. This does not necessarily mean sources where the English is difficult to read, but sources which discuss difficult concepts. For example, I can think that many philosophical concepts are difficult to entirely grasp. At times, whenever certain philosophical elements are discussed or debated, each statement has a lot of implications, and when you are hit with a lot of statements with a lot of implications suddenly in a paragraph, it's difficult to understand the overall main point, because there are too many details that overwhelm your mind. So when you work with philosophy subjects or anything which is difficult to read or understand in one go, then you will actually be training your mind to search and find for the main point that the author is trying to make. Similarly, read works of science. There are a lot of scientific RCs that are coming in CAT in recent weeks. Moreover, I think there is a conscious effort to look for managers or students who will be able to understand quantitative information as well. So I think that there is a conscious effort in putting scientific RCs so that they look for students who are able to handle even quantitative information that is given in passages. So read even scientific journals, read articles in scientific magazines. That will help you understand difficult topics and comprehend difficult topics. So now that you know what the verbal strategy is, make sure you have a schedule for what you are going to read. Most places will give you that you have to read, but having a list of things to read is difficult to make, and the reason why it's difficult to make is because it has to be individualized. The best place where you get articles to read every single day are the newspapers. From the editorials, from newspaper websites like the New Yorker or the New York Times, every day you will get a list of places, things that you can start reading. And the more you read, the better you will get at overall verbal and VARC. Make sure that you are reading it not just passively but actively. Sit down with a pen and paper and only then start reading. Now that we know how to do verbal, let's take a look at DILR. So I feel that most of the struggle that students face with most of the highs and lows that they experience as far as their CAT score is because of DILR. Some days are good for you, some days you do well in DILR, some days are just not your day and you do very poorly in DILR. It's just one of those sections where which can go either way. But I feel that that is the case because students try to take an intuitive way to solving problems. While this works in most of the time, it also leaves you open for those kind of failures where your mind doesn't work or you don't know where to exactly get started. So to avoid that kind of a feeling where you feel overwhelmed by the amount of information that is shown to you in a particular set, or you don't know exactly where to start, what we always discuss is how to start by representing the information. That gives you a starting point from where to start thinking, and that I feel is the biggest way that you can reduce the uncertainty over your DILR attempt. If you go for an intuitive way, you will be taking the risk that inspiration does not strike you that day, and if inspiration does not strike you that day, you will do very poorly in DILR, and this is an exam that you get to take only once a year. So instead of leaving it to luck, I would always suggest that you have a plan in place, and the plan is basically that you take all the DILRs that have come recently in CAT from all sources. Just try to find the different DILRs and try to find the best way of representing information for each DILR. So you should know what is the right way for representing information given an arrangement. What is the right way of representing information if it is a question based on scheduling? If it is a question based on a 2D space LR, how do you represent information? If it is a question based on Venn diagrams. So if you actually go through all of these representations, remember that for this particular type of LR set, it is most likely that I have to use this form of representation. Then you don't rely on inspiration to strike you to solve a particular DILR set. That makes it far more deterministic. This will reduce the chance that you completely choke on actual CAT day and do poorly in DILR. Knowing how to represent the information is one thing, doing it accurately is another. That requires practice. So please practice as many DILR sets as possible. I would suggest that practice at least one DILR set every single day. There are many students who love solving DILRs. There are many students who absolutely hate DILRs. Irrespective of that, the mock cannot be the only time when you actually sit and solve a DILR. I know many students don't actually sit and solve a DILR unless they are giving a mock. But that is not the time when you will actually be learning or be improving in your particular skill set. The mock is where you analyze or assess where you stand. Improving and building on your skill set happens with topic tests, with practice tests, with targeted sectionals even. So that is completely different from, so you should always solve more DILRs than just that are given in a particular mock. Another thing that I've often seen is that DILRs require patience. At times you have to invest up to 15 minutes in a question without getting a single answer, and that can be quite unnerving to many students. But just remember that to get a decent score in DILR, you need not solve all 8 DILRs. You need to solve only 5 DILRs. So even if you have put in like 15 minutes in a particular DILR set, if you're close to solving the DILR set, actually just go through and finish it. Because abandoning an DILR set after putting in 10 minutes is a bad idea. Unless it is nowhere near being solved, don't abandon it after 10 minutes. If you actually have the patience and perseverance to see it through, you will be completing one of the 5 required DILR sets. Always set your expectations properly. You are not going to solve all 8 DILR sets, so you should not target solving a DILR set within 8 minutes or anything of that sort. You are going to take 10 to 15 minutes to solve a DILR set. So always pace yourself accordingly. Manage your expectations. Even if the answer is not coming immediately, don't abandon the set unless you are making neither head nor tail of that DILR set. Choose the right DILR sets where you have the best chance of solving and then stick with them. It is important that you do not flit across the section going from one place to another, leaving each set solved midway. That will actually hurt you in the entire section as such. So make sure that you start off by identifying all the different types of DILRs that are there and trying to identify the right form of representation for each. If you know, okay, this is an arrangement question, I should probably start with this kind of a table, it will reduce the stress that is involved in solving a DILR set. So make a organized effort to solve all the DILR set moving forward, and that will give you a better idea of how to solve DILR. So this is the strategy I would urge all students to adopt going forward as far as CAT is concerned. Remember that 6 months is more than enough to CAT crack if you put in consistent effort. And the key element in that sentence is consistent. Starting off enthusiastically and losing steam in 2 weeks is what a majority of students will do. If you don't do that, if you actually stick through the plan, if you keep putting 2 to 3 hours, think of yourself that you are with each week that you actually stick to the plan, you are moving up one ladder of the percentile. You're starting from 85, then going to 86, going to 87. So you're moving up each ladder of the percentile every time you stick to the plan. So if you want to go up to 99 percentile, you have to be consistent. You have to put in weeks of effort. You have to put in weeks of consistent effort. And think of it in this way. If it helps you to visually put it in front of you, draw a graph, and each time you stick to the plan, give yourself one more percentile that you have moved up in the chart. The best way to do this is to have a consistent organized effort. Keep at it, keep working hard, and that is how you will crack CAT in 6 months. Thank you for tuning in.